La verdad es que este grupo de premiados yo creo que representan de una manera muy clara y muy gráfica el espíritu que tenéis todos vosotros, ¿no? Un espíritu de aprendizaje y de colaboración en red. Perdonar, pero a veces el sonido se acopla. Bien, qué bonita el testimonio de la niña, ¿no? De trabajamos con la realidad aumentada, me ha gustado mucho. Hay resultados en la vida que no nos sorprenden, hay éxitos en la vida que no nos sorprenden si analizamos la trayectoria de sus protagonistas. Este es el caso de Bill Drayton, Premio Príncipe de Asturias de Cooperación Internacional 2011. Ya en la universidad, Bill Drayton estuvo relacionado con proyectos que trataban de mejorar socialmente el entorno. Él estuvo muy influido por los pensamientos de personas tan importantes, relevantes e influyentes como Martin Luther King, Gandhi y una figura muy curiosa, un emperador indio llamado Ashoka del siglo III antes de Cristo. Él, en su época, en los años 80, en su época de estudiante y posteriormente, cuando acabó sus estudios, viajó por varios países, entre ellos la India, Indonesia, y empezó a generar el embrión, la semilla, de una asociación muy importante que hoy día se denomina Ashoka. Ashoka es una asociación de emprendedores sociales, la más grande del mundo, donde están englobados hombres y mujeres que trabajan por y para la solución de los problemas más urgentes del planeta. Fijaros, desde su fundación, fijaros en las cifras, Ashoka ha proporcionado financiación inicial, servicios de apoyo profesional y acceso a una red global de más de 3.000 líderes sociales, emprendedores de más de 70 países. Drayton es el padre de un término, el término de emprendedor social, que combina características de dos lados. Por un lado, las características más propias de un empresario, guiado por una metodología pragmática y orientado a resultados, y por otro lado, las características más propias de un reformador social. La idea sobre la que descansa Ashoka, esta asociación, es que para asumir los retos de la sociedad necesitamos que cada hombre y que cada mujer, independientemente del papel que tenga en la sociedad, sea protagonista de los cambios, bien sea en un ámbito, en una dimensión global o local. Yo quiero llamar al escenario a un maestro de la comunicación, que es Manuel Campo Vidal, al que están preparando ahí en un lado, que va a establecer una conversación con Bill Drayton. Ya sabéis que la actitud 2.0 pues está basada en 4 Cs y una de ellas es la de conversar. ¿Conversar para qué? Para compartir, para extraer ideas. Manuel nos va a ayudar a entender, a que Bill Drayton explique cómo todos estos cambios están influyendo en el mundo de la educación. Manuel, por favor, si me puedes acompañar al escenario. Un aplauso para Manuel Campo Vidal, un maestro de la comunicación. Manuel, vas a ayudarnos a que Bill Drayton nos cuente la idea que tiene sobre la empatía, ¿verdad? Una de las patas de la inteligencia emocional.
Así es. Buenos días.
Os dejo ya con él. Gracias, Manuel.
La verdad es que es una suerte para mí, una gran oportunidad, sinceramente, estar de nuevo en el Encuentro Internacional de Educarret en Fundación Telefónica. Yo guardo un recuerdo magnífico de mi conversación con algunos de los que estáis aquí o con algunos de los que estuvieron hace 2 años, porque me dio la oportunidad de conocer personas muy interesantes, de establecer una relación posterior con ellos, porque también estoy implicado en el mundo de la educación, y me atrae mucho el planteamiento de este congreso, porque estáis hablando con agentes de cambio, ciudad a ciudad, estáis hablando con agentes de cambio barrio a barrio, aldea a aldea, comunidad a comunidad, escuela a escuela, y el cambio se hace así, porque cuando estamos diciendo que queremos un mundo distinto, que queremos un mundo mejor, hay que empezar a cambiarlo, desde luego, en cada uno de los ámbitos, aunque sea pequeños, en los que nosotros trabajamos. Yo tuve la oportunidad hace 2 días de conversar con un paleontólogo español, Juan Luis Arzuaga. Para quien se sitúe, es Atapuerca, que es el mayor yacimiento para explorar de dónde venimos, en la provincia de Burgos, y decía dos cosas muy importantes que creo que están en el fondo y que nos puede interesar para todos. La primera, cada vez que en la historia de la humanidad, aunque fuera de los hombres primitivos, por decirlo así, hubo un avance en comunicación, hubo un avance consecuentemente en desarrollo y se produjo un salto en la humanidad. Y algo así estamos viviendo con las redes sociales. Lo digo yo, que vengo como periodista y como conocedor y estudioso de los medios tradicionales, prensa, radio y televisión. Ahora hay unos medios emergentes, Educarred se instala en ellos. Este puede ser un nuevo avance, lo es, en comunicación, y por lo tanto se puede dar un salto en el desarrollo de la humanidad, porque tiene muchísimas más posibilidades de las que tenía. Por eso me parece que el Congreso y el trabajo que se hace normalmente desde la Fundación Telefónica está tan bien situado y tan bien orientado. Y la segunda cosa que decía Juan Luis Arzuaga es que no esperemos el futuro resignados, como algo sobrevenido, como algo inevitable, como algo en el que simplemente vamos a ser víctimas de él. Algunos no son víctimas, pero simplemente como espectadores de la historia. Así que cerremos el capítulo de lamentos, entendamos que el futuro será lo que seamos capaces de construir, y a mí me parece que una reunión de esta naturaleza expresa de manera práctica, con rostro humano, las grandes posibilidades de cambiar la sociedad que nosotros tenemos. Yo trabajo desde hace algunos años en programas de emprendedores, en programas de televisión. Conozco emprendedores sociales extraordinarios en este país y en otros, y me ha interesado enormemente la organización que fundó Bill Drayton, Ashoka, que es la mayor asociación global de emprendedores, como bien saben, porque me parece que está subiendo a una categoría superior y dando amparo en todo el mundo a todos esos emprendedores sociales, que además de hacer su trabajo, muchas veces tienen dificultades para hacerse entender y para que la sociedad entienda la importancia de su labor. Déjenme decir simplemente que su fundador, que ya creo que lo ha dicho Elena, o lo saben ustedes por los periódicos, Bill Drayton, que ha recibido muchísimas nominaciones, condecoraciones, reconocimientos internacionales. Ayer en España recibió el Premio Príncipe de Asturias a la cooperación, y allí estaba con Leonard Cohen, que recibió el de las letras, con los héroes de la central nuclear de Japón, que realmente estremeció al mundo con el accidente reciente. Estaba con Howard Gardner, que estudió y nos demostró que la inteligencia es múltiple. Y la verdad es que en ese marco que es, para las personas que sois de fuera de España, tenéis que saber que es realmente nuestro premio Nobel a nuestra escala, donde pasan personajes extraordinarios del mundo, hubo ese reconocimiento para Bill Drayton. Yo creo que para todos es una inmensa suerte poderle escuchar directamente. Él voló ayer de madrugada, llegó a Madrid, y tendremos la oportunidad de escucharle ahora, y para mí será un honor entrevistarlo. Así que, amigas y amigos, con todos nosotros, Bill Drayton.
Thank you.
Hay una presentación previa de su organización que va a hacernos el señor Drayton y que seguiremos con enorme interés.
Well, first I would like to bow to all of you because you are the people who will probably do more for Spain than anyone else. And you're the unsung heroes, like the heroes at Fukushima. Now, in 5th grade, I wanted to start a newspaper. It was hand-typed using carbon paper. Probably no one here remembers what carbon paper was, until I could eventually purchase a mimeograph machine. Then I had to get ads, and I had to deal with kids in other schools to make this work. When my mother died, I found correspondence between my parents and the teachers in the school. And the teachers are saying, you've got to trust your son. This is really important, and don't show that you're concerned. They tried hard. So as you can tell, I'm no good at sports. Football, I'm always the crashee. So this was very important. And it's just one of many stories of how you can make a difference, are making a difference. So I'm very grateful. I just wanted to say that first. There is a fact in the world that we can't change that defines the era we're in. And that is that the rate at which change is accelerating is mathematically exponential. That's just a fact. A second fact that's very closely related is that the number of people causing change is also increasing exponentially across the world. And the combinations. If you think change is quick today, by the time a 15-year-old is 25 or 30, it's going to be many times the rate of change today. And that defines the challenge that every child, every young person has, every country has, every city has. We have to have different skills in a world where everything is changing. Remember, when one thing changes, it bumps everything else, and they have to change. So this is a very quickly multiplying process. We also have to organize differently. No longer hierarchies of a few people telling everyone else what to do, but genuine teams. And a team means everyone's got to be a player. In a world defined by change, everyone has to be able to contribute to change to be able to be a contributor. And so the challenge that we face is how do we help every society, Spain, Europe, India, the United States, get through this transition. And there is no one more on the front line than the people in this room. You've committed yourself to being the real pioneers that will make it possible for Spain to have a next generation that in only 10 or 15 years will be able to make this society and everyone a change-maker society. The key factor for success for any organization, any society, is what proportion of the people are change makers, able to contribute to change, and how good are they at that, and how good is the society at helping them do that. This is a very profound change. It's the biggest structural change probably since the agricultural revolution, and it's coming very fast. It's been building up for 300 years, and we're just at the tipping point now. So that's the context. Now, I am very privileged. I was only representing a movement yesterday, so your colleague and ours, Narcissus, he is an Ashoka fellow, a social entrepreneur. What Ashoka does is we find the best social entrepreneurs, people who have an idea that will really help change the world structurally in a big way, and we just help them as best we can to succeed, form a community. There are 3,000 of these people. They play a very key role. They're key allies to you. Out of the 3,000, 700 are focused on children and young people. That's by far the largest group, which tells you how important the change that's coming in this area that you're on the front lines of. These entrepreneurs are important because they see the new pattern and they help people through the change. So I'd like to begin, if I can master this technology, to introduce you to one of your colleagues, Mary Gordon. She was a teacher in Toronto, Canada, and she saw increasingly that the children coming to her class had only aggression as a response when other children made them uncomfortable. And of course, aggression invites aggression, and every time you get through that cycle, it gets deeper. And what she recognized is there's no future in the world we're going into for people who don't have the skill of empathy. who can't get beyond that. And she gave herself permission, which is the critical factor that defines an entrepreneur or a change maker. She gave herself permission to say, this is more important than my lesson plan. I am going to change it, and not just for my class, but for all schools. And some of you may know her work because it's already coming to Europe. It's now national policy in New Zealand. She's gone from 2 classrooms to 19,000 classrooms in 7 countries. Her goal is to make sure that every child without exception grasps the skill of empathy. Now this is really critical. In the world of change I was describing, any child that does not know how to genuinely, truly understand all the people around them, not just a few people, but everyone around them, layers out into the future and in groups, and then be able to guide their own behavior, is going to hurt people, is going to disrupt institutions, not because they want to, they just don't have the skill. And in a world that's changing faster and faster, the rules cover less and less. They haven't been invented, they're in conflict, they're changing. So every year, the level of empathetic skill that children have to master is getting higher, more complicated. So what she's doing, and what many of you are doing, is incredibly important. So what does she do? She asks the schools to give her 2 to 3 hours a month for a year. The younger the better. 1st grade is better than 3rd grade, but she goes all the way up through 8th grade. And her core methodology is very simple. She asks an infant less than 1 year old plus mom to come to the class. The infant wears a t-shirt called The Professor, resides on a green blanket. The 1st graders sit in a circle around the professor, and their job is to figure out what the professor is saying. And infants are very good at nonverbal communication. And then what's the professor feeling? Well, this is a limbic learning process. So she says it's not learning, it's grasping. It's a deeper part of the personality. Now, this works. Canada has very good statistics on bullying. Bullying rates come down and stay down after this intervention. Now, this is one person, just like everyone in this room, who gave herself permission, and she's worked at this problem. Now, she's one of 700, and she, like many of you, have something to contribute to this change, so we have a generation that's able. So, Jill Violette is, as you can probably tell from her healthy, athletic look, from California. When she was 11, she was allowed to play boys' games in the playground, which for some reason was really important to her. So she believes in the right to play. We've had many of the recess times eliminated, so there's more time to prepare for tests. Especially in the poorest city center schools. So she's, in the last couple of years, she's got 258 schools to bring recess back. They pay her, she hires a local young person, trains them, and the focus is on group play. So if you look down from a window, 2nd-story window, to begin with, you don't see a pattern. After a couple of weeks, there are groups of children playing games. After 3 to 6 months, 70 to 80% of the space is group play. But it's very effective, again. Now, these two pieces fit together, grasping empathy and practicing. There are other fellows who deal with the same thing in the classroom, focusing on 5th to 8th grade girls who tend to lose their self-confidence, and you have the so-called mean girl syndrome. Well, there's 700 stories like this, and we've learned something very important from it. I'm just going to give you one more quickly. This is Ibrahim from Bangladesh. He has a 7th grade education, totally poor village background. The UN measurements of his impact is that there is a 44% increase in enrollment of children coming to school and the dropout rate cut in half. And everything he does is the children do it. The children do the exercises, they grade the exercises, they help one another. He also has children from first grade on up doing for-profit activities, making soap, raising poultry, repairing diesel pump sets. They make a profit. Half of it goes to a secondary school fund. But the important point is that the young people are in charge. Now, as I see many stories, his work has become national policy. It's moved to Brazil. If you go to the state of Brasilia, you'll find the so-called Bangladeshi model. Now, again, this is all based on giving children and giving young people a set of skills, social skills that they really need. Now, this next case, just to give you a sense of the diversity, this whiskered fellow is not an Ashoka fellow. This is a giant African rat. The rat is involved in clearing mines here. There are lots of mines in Africa. Well, it turns out rats are better than people or dogs because if they step on a mine by mistake, nothing happens. And they've got a better sense of smell than either we or dogs do. And it also turns out they're very good as if you put out 10 spit samples, they can tell which has TB. So if you're far away from a lab, this is great, and you also, they detect 40% more cases of TB than the labs. So any problem, there are social entrepreneurs there. Now, I'm just quickly, these people are very powerful. Almost all of them, 98%, continue full-time. Over half have changed national policy within 5 years. I just wanted to share that with you because, again, Mary Gordon was a teacher. Jill Violette, Ibrahim Soban, these are people, you could have solved any one of these problems. They just gave themselves permission, just as you've given yourself permission to change the schools here. Now, there's some major implications. If any child doesn't master the skill of empathy, in the world they're going into, they are going to be marginalized. There are whole groups of people and children who do not have this skill. They're not getting it at home, they're not getting it in the street, and they're not getting it in the school. They have no future. This is the worst thing you can do to any human being. You're denying them the ability to be a part of society, the ability to contribute. We know how to help children grasp and practice this skill. Now, how do we change the schools to make sure that every principal, every teacher, the parents understand this? Those parents who come from groups that don't have this skill, it's not that hard. You can ask a parent, all right, the 6-year-old sister hits the 4-year-old brother. You've broken the rules, there's some punishment, but you can also say, well, how do you think your brother felt when that happened? And if you can also explain to the parents how terribly important it is for their children to have this skill, they're totally motivated. You can start breaking that pattern. Now, I'm not making the argument for any of these methods. There are many more methods. But seeing the problem, and just as you already have, giving yourself permission to be creative, to use all the techniques that are available. And we're happy to share with you all these methodologies. They're easily available. You'll be creating others. Now, I want to make one other point. I've been dealing with young children so far in these comments. As you all know, when people go through roughly age 12, the brain rewires, and you're suddenly dealing with a young person, not a child anymore. And we know that young people are young people. They can organize. They can cause change. And if we encourage that, that's the most important thing we can do. Very, very, very few schools anywhere in the world encourage it. The adults, we are in charge. We say, we run the classroom, we run the sports. If there are extracurricular activities, we sort of control that. Now, we know that there are 4 key skills. Empathy, still the base. You can't do teamwork without empathy, but teamwork's the next skill. Then leadership. And in a world where things are changing faster and faster, and that becomes the critical skill, change-making. So 4 learned, complicated skills. And we just know that you can't do this just by reading a book or talking about it. You've got to do it. So when I, for whatever reason, got into my head to start this newspaper, I was blessed by teachers who said, yes, this is really more important for Bill than his Latin classes, which I hated. I hope none of you were Latin teachers. And they made room, and they encouraged it. That was an incredible gift to me. I think it was the most important single thing that happened that gave me the realization that I am a change maker. I can change the world. I have these skills. In fact, I was developing those skills. The key element here is that it's got to be the young person's idea. The young person builds the team. They leave an impact. I left that newspaper. Now, we have so many of the Ashoka Fellows have come to this realization. We have experiences all over the world. Literally millions of young people where the Ashoka Fellows have done this. And you can see this is part of what Narcissus is doing here. The traditional measures of mathematics and language, which is usually what's measured, goes up. If you respect people and you say, you take charge, you be powerful, not surprisingly, like the rest of us, they think that's really quite terrific. And the leverage for you as teachers who want to cause change is amazing. If you can get 2 kids out of 500 in a middle school to have their own dream and succeed, a tutoring service, a virtual radio station, doesn't matter, but it's got to be their idea. They're going to recruit, our experience is roughly 20, 25 other kids. If you have a virtual radio station, who's going to broadcast on Thursday afternoons between 3 and 6? You got to recruit someone. So all those people are learning teamwork, and it's their idea. You know, like the rest of it's your idea, you're really committed to it. And they're all getting the idea that it can cause change. Well, if you get 3 more in the second year, then you have 5 teams times 20, 25, so 100 kids who are saying, come and join us, use our services, and they're better at marketing their peers than any of us can be. This is very, very powerful. And we've seen whole cities, systems of schools change in very poor neighborhoods because of the power that you release. For the first couple of kids, it's very difficult because they have to change the youth culture as much as anything else. You have the skills to do this. When you see someone who's got a dream, and that is not I guarantee you that I've practically never been with any group of young people when you really ask, there's at least a couple of them have an idea in their head. Encourage them. And you know how to do that. And then they'll be your best allies. So just as with empathy, if you end the cycle of aggression, the school is a much nicer place for everyone. If young people take charge, they will be change makers. There's a much stronger future of the country, and the school will be a lot happier place. So again, deep thanks to you. If Spain is going to be a country that is a leader in the future, as it has been for so many centuries, it has to make it through this transition. Any country that doesn't do this is toast. The companies here will not be able to compete if they can't have a workforce of change makers. Same for every sector. So really, literally, the future of the country, as well as if the individual children, the families, the communities they come from, are in your leadership hands. And so thank you very much. Great.
Gracias, profesor, muchas gracias. Yo le estaba escuchando y tomaba nota de lo que me parecía que era el fondo de la cuestión, y siempre veía que esos proyectos eran innovadores, es la clave de la cuestión. Proyectos muchos, pero valen sobre todo los innovadores, personas muy cercanas a esa realidad, la profesora de Canadá, el profesor de Bangladesh, quien sea, muy cercanos a la realidad, y el trabajo con las emociones. A mí me ha llamado especialmente, poderosamente la atención, como si el arma secreta de la organización que usted ha puesto en marcha fuera trabajar con las emociones, porque particularmente en este mundo trabajamos muy poco con las emociones. Ese trabajo tan decisivo de las emociones en la educación es el factor diferencial para el éxito en la organización que usted fundó respecto a otras iniciativas.
So, the importance of emotions. I think we all know that we are very integrated people. We're not just the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex came late in human evolution. And we are driven by these very deep factors. One of the other laureates, actually 3 of them, were dealing with the development of the brain. And it's very encouraging to know that the adult brain keeps producing new brain cells. I find that very reassuring. But one of the others, colleagues there, was focused on the mirror neurons. Now, elephants and chimpanzees have they have this capacity, but humans are unique in having the highest level of this skill. What defines us as a species? It's not that we're so beautiful or so strong, but that we work together. And what I've been describing is the most fundamental earthquake for humans. The change that drives all other changes is when we change the way we work together. And moving away from hierarchies of control, rules and punishment, to a world based on our defining quality, that we really honestly, even physiologically, empathize and connect with one another, and we're able to build these very complicated structures. A team is very complicated. Everyone is taking initiative towards a common goal, and they've got to somehow make all that creativity and initiative work together. But that's the norm. And the World Wide Web, what is it? It's a way for us to put teams of people together in any combination, in any quick changing combination that's right for a particular task. This is amazing. But it's based deep in our personality. And the reason that Mary Gordon is able to get these young children to grasp empathy when they're studying the baby, and they're also watching the mother-child empathetic relationship, which is among the most highly developed in the world, they get it in this short period of time because it ties into probably the deepest genetic drive we have, which is to be a part of society. We want to be good people. We want to contribute love and respect at the highest possible level. And when you give children the ability to grasp the critical skill of empathy, and you give them the opportunity and help them develop that skill, you're giving them, to use slightly older language, the ability to love the world, to love other people. That is incredibly powerful. And as you create in the school a community of everyone a change maker, everyone a team member, everyone working together, that's a miniature of what the whole society needs to be. If Spain is going to succeed, if any country is going to succeed, it has to be a team of teams where everyone's taking initiative, and all that is based on this fundamental ability. I describe it as a skill because you have to learn it, but it's deeply tied to the emotions of being able to genuinely love, understand, want to help all the people around you. Not because you're going to be punished if you don't. Zeus is not going to come and strike your hand off because you broke some rule. But it's very fundamental, and it's really deep in our personality.
Sí. Decía antes el señor Drayton, las matemáticas sirven para medir, y los éxitos, el trabajo de esta organización están medidos. Hay algunas cifras que son espectaculares. A mí me gustaría destacar las que a mí más me han impactado. Que el 94% de los emprendedores seleccionados por Ashoka sigan en su idea después de 5 años es algo poco común en el mundo de los emprendedores. Naturalmente que algunos continúan siempre, pero no el 94%. Que el 71% hayan influido en la política pública del país en el que están en 70 países, con sus ideas, es algo también sin precedentes. O que el 93% hayan visto que sus ideas son copiadas por otros. Magnífico, porque es la forma de diseminar en la sociedad las mismas ideas, y por tanto de incorporar, como decía el ponente, justamente que se necesitan miles de personas en la misma dirección para hacer que el cambio del mundo sea posible. Pero hay dos que todavía me han impactado muchísimo más. La primera de ellas es que reciben $0 o 0 euros o 0 cualquier moneda de los presupuestos de los gobiernos. 0. Eso me ha impactado especialmente. Y también el hecho de que entre los jóvenes emprendedores no pensemos solo en jóvenes de 20 años, sino que también los hay de 12 años, de 14 años, de 15 años. Eso me ha impresionado especialmente, y me gustaría algún comentario sobre esas dos cifras sobre todo. 0 ayuda pública y emprendedores de 12 y de 14 años.
Well, I'm sure that the people here know the power of 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds. There is nothing more moving for me or anyone else when you have a 14-year-old who is having this life-transforming moment, that they realize that they can change the world. They are putting that tutoring service in their school or their neighborhood. 12-year-olds, I think, are particularly magical because they haven't yet learned, they haven't been told constantly that they can't do this. It's actually easier for us to work with 12-year-olds than 18-year-olds because of that. Hopefully that will change. I think it may help. Let's see if I can do this. This fellow holding the trophy here is he's a little bit older, but he was elected. We selected him as an Ashoka Youth Venture from a slum in Bombay. He comes from a tribal group, always in trouble with the police because the British described the group he belongs to as a so-called criminal tribe. So huge constant hassles with the police. But he gave himself permission to set up a cricket league. He's holding a prize from one of their matches. He took the initiative to invite the police to come after the games and start breaking up that pattern. Now, Sharma is going to be a very powerful change maker in life. The statistics you were using, we know that over 80% of the Ashoka Fellows started something when they were this age. Here's just another example. Jason was brought to our attention by the police. He's a little bit older here. He was, again, about 14 when he became a youth venturer. He had a real interest in bicycles, other people's bicycles. And the police were smart enough to realize that he was a very energetic person, and so they brought him to us. Now, here you see him in a store that he set up, Second Gear Bikes, and this is a very poor neighborhood, a very tough neighborhood. And the deal is, any kid can come to Second Gear Bikes, and if they put in 35 hours and really learn how to build and rebuild and repair bikes, they'll get one for free. And then they're employable, because there's a great shortage of people who know how to do this. Well, you know, he didn't go to jail. He went to college. He's doing brilliantly. Several hundred kids went through this program, and then they set up Second Byte for repairing computers. Well, I could give you 4,000, 5,000 of these examples, including here in Spain. And every one of these kids does an amazing job. They are changing their world. They're bringing many other kids in. Now, I am sure that in every one of your schools there are people like this. We did a focus group. We did 30 focus groups, because America's got so many different groups and ages and ethnic groups and so on, before we started this work, based on learning from the fellows. And in every single group there were children, young people who were ready, who had ideas. The challenge is, how do you find them without taking over? How do you delicately help them succeed? So again, I think we can help you. We've got this program right here in Spain. We can connect you with the if you've got a young person who's interested in bicycles or whatnot, we can connect them with other young people and through the wonderful web. So I think, you know, it's actually very simple. Mary Gordon, Ibrahim gave themselves permission. If you can give people the greatest gift, which is the gift to know that they can give, that they can change the world, and the only way that happens is if they actually do it. And that's a big change, but it's very magical.
Gracias. Hay algunas personas, no sé si me escuchan. Las personas que quieren enviarnos preguntas, aunque tenemos muy poquitos minutos ya para dialogar con el señor Drayton, sé que algunos de ustedes lo han enviado a través de Twitter. Tenemos ya aquí un resumen de las que ha llegado, pero pueden pasarlo también con papel, que el papel no ha desaparecido, y me lo pueden hacer llegar. Buena parte de las preguntas que llegan a través de Twitter están relacionadas sobre el momento en el que nace el emprendedor. Podíamos resumir así: ¿el emprendedor nace o el emprendedor se hace? Porque usted ha dicho antes, y es muy interesante, que preguntas a un grupo de niños y siempre hay 2 o 3 que tienen sueños. Y muchas veces los emprendedores son los que ya han tenido un sueño, cuando eran niños, cuando eran jóvenes o cuando eran mayores. ¿El emprendedor nace o se hace?
It's hard to remember, but we, as a world, we only made the commitment to universal literacy about 100 years ago. It was only 400 or 500 years ago that people were burned at the stake in England because they wanted to translate the Bible into English. The idea that somehow everyone would have access to it. But we did make that decision, and 100 years later, we haven't quite completed it, but the world did an amazing job. Almost every child now learns to read and write. Now we have an equivalent, if anything, even more important job. We've got to give people these core skills so that they can contribute the heart of life in a world defined by change. They have to master these skills. We have to make the commitment that every child without exception is going to master empathy, teamwork, leadership for change. And we're going to give them every opportunity to practice that, and we're going to help their parents do that. It's a very big change, but it was a big change when we decided that people were going to have access even to the Bible. And then we decided everyone was going to be literate. Now, we know there are some people who have 100,000 word vocabularies and other people have 2,000 word vocabularies. There are genetic differences. People have different temperaments. Some people want to be musicians, other people want to be scholars. But everyone needs to be literate. Well, the same thing is true here. Not everyone is going to be able to change the pattern in their field across the continent. But everyone has to be able to help whatever institution they're a part of not only live in and respond to change coming from all sides, but to contribute to it. The value that any organization is going to be creating 10 or 15 years from now is contributing to change. I mean, we can already see that in the islands that are most successful in the world. Silicon Valley, Bangalore, individual companies. The key to success is your ability to contribute to change, not just respond to it. So again, just imagine what it's going to be like for a 15-year-old today. Now, they can find repetitive function jobs today. There aren't going to be very many of those in 15 years. When today's 15-year-old is 30, they're in really big trouble if they don't have these skills. And so yes, there are differences, of course, but we've got to make sure that every single human being has the opportunity to contribute in the world they're going to be living in. I think that's just completely fundamental. I feel so strongly about this. I just think that if we understood what we were doing, it would be criminal to allow any child not to grasp the skill of empathy, because they will be marginalized. It's the worst thing you can do to anyone. It's the cruelest, most destructive thing.
Como sabe, aquí hay muchísimos profesores y nos preguntan desde la escuela si nos puede distinguir la educación en emociones, que es lo que estamos hablando, o la educación en valores. ¿Es lo mismo la educación en emociones que la educación en valores?
Sorry, would you say that again?
¿Es lo mismo la educación en emociones que la educación en valores?
Emotions and values.
Yes.
This is a really good question. Many people say change is good, but maybe it's for bad. Well, that's of course true, and we've had our Pol Pots and Hitlers in the world. We know that. I must say I don't worry about that very much for two reasons. One is when people genuinely are guided by empathetic ethics, people really, really want to be a part of society. They really want to contribute. The moment a baby is born, they're working at it. Children and young people will work for decades to learn language. This is really tedious and hard, but they keep at it because it's critical for their being a part of society. Well, if you hurt people, you're not going to be a part of society. So people want to be good people. Rules and punishment doesn't do it anymore. The world is too complicated, it's moving too fast. That's one of the reasons that corruption is having an explosion at the moment. A world where everyone is powerful, everyone is able to cause change. You can't afford people who are not exercising that power for the good of all, exercising it for the good of the team and the team's objectives. So once we get through this transition, if you can help make sure that this generation of young people has the skill to be able to be good people in these new circumstances, I think they will. Second reason, at the moment, most people don't want to see problems. Why would you want to see a problem if you don't think you can do anything about it? You see a problem, you don't think you can do anything, you're just going to feel badly about yourself. Well, so people don't want to see problems. But once you're a change maker, you love to see a problem. Oh, there's a big problem here. I know how to deal with this. I know how to work with other people. This is an opportunity for me to really contribute in an important way. Now, when we shift from a world where most people don't want to see problems, where everyone wants to see problems and opportunities and they have the skills, there's no way that the problems can outrun the solutions, because everyone is like a really smart white blood cell. As they course through their lives, oh, there's a problem. You know, and a team forms, they go to work on it. So I'm very optimistic. The problem is the transition. People who do not have these skills are absolutely terrified in a world of change. It's hard for us to understand because we're comfortable with it. You know, once you're a change maker, it's a very stable thing for a human being to be. Just as this change or that change, you know how to deal with it. But if you don't have that, and you don't have that self-confidence of being a change maker, this world is getting very scary. You have all this technical training as an engineer, but you don't understand what's going on. You don't know how to contribute it. And even the half-life of knowledge is getting shorter and shorter. A friend runs a group of technical colleges in India, and they've discovered, these are 4-year colleges, that what they teach in the first year, half of it is obsolete by the 4th year. So
¿Qué conservaría, otra pregunta que nos llega, qué conservaría del antiguo modelo educativo que sea válido para el futuro? Usted nos propone un cambio, pero ¿qué conservaría del antiguo modelo que sea válido para el futuro?
Well, probably almost all of it. I will admit that I think even Latin has got great merits at this point. One of the things that really impressed me about your queen yesterday was her depth of knowledge of history. It's a huge gift that she has. She's able to see the world and understand it. And as you know, she has a very strong interest in India. She knows the history there. She knew immediately who Ashoka was, which is very unusual. So knowledge really is important. And, you know, if people are not able to do math or literacy, all that is still important. The problem is that if you don't have these skills, you won't be able to use the knowledge. No matter how much computer science you have, if you hurt people, you're out. Finished. So it's additive rather than subtractive. Second, we have evolved over a long period of time fundamental values. And part of the job in a time of transition and in a world of change is how do we make sure that those values aren't damaged or lost in the process. Now, I'll just give you a very concrete example. Right now, privacy is challenged. We have to have preventive surveillance because a few people can do so much damage with the technology available in the world today. That's very bad for privacy. After some decades of the cost of managing information coming down at 30% a year, Moore's Law, Google and all sorts of other people can connect all the dots. That's not good for privacy. And the private business entrepreneurs in the technology space have discovered that the way they make money, which because they run companies they're very interested in, is you give people something, you get information, and you sell that information. That is not good for privacy. So we are faced with a challenge right now. How do we defend privacy? Well, without privacy, you lose freedom, you lose creativity. It's a very key value. Now, this is one of the reasons social entrepreneurs are important. What defines a social entrepreneur is not the field. I mean, you know, everyone is involved in education, companies, people with this or that philosophy or religious belief or whatever. But the social entrepreneurs, people like Narcissus, are here because they are deeply in their personality committed to the good of all. And so they step up and they say, no, we're losing privacy. This is not a good thing. And because they're really good entrepreneurs, they propose alternatives and make them happen. Once we're through the transition and everyone is pursuing the good of all, it becomes easier. But so I think the knowledge and the values, they're not changing.
Muy bien, tenemos tiempo para una pregunta más, y esa pregunta me ha parecido que de las que llegan aquí probablemente represente a muchas personas que tienen voluntad de cambio, pero que tienen problemas si hacen cambios profundos en la escuela en la que están encargados. Me parece interpretar cuando alguien dice: siempre he pensado que debía dejar materias a un lado y crear una clase empática. Necesitamos una clase empática. Pero ¿cómo hago eso y mantengo mi trabajo?
So just to make sure I get the question, how do we actually cause change in the reality of the structure of the schools? Is that?
Sí. Sí, puede tener alguien un problema de que el jefe de la escuela le diga: no hagas clase empática, no te muevas, quiero conservar mi trabajo, quiero hacer una clase empática, pero quiero conservar mi trabajo para no ser despedido.
This is why you have to be change makers. One of the things that everyone who's an entrepreneur or change maker confronts is you're going to people and saying, please do something unreasonable, i.e. something you haven't done before. And that is part of the core skill of being an entrepreneur or a change maker. So let me just take that concrete example. If for some reason, which this is very unlikely because, if someone is interested and explains Mary Gordon's approach, and all it takes is, an hour a month, maybe 2 hours, and here are the results, the probability is people will say yes. But even if they don't, what can you do? Well, when you have a meeting with parents, you can say, here's why this is important, and let's work together with your daughter. So, as a parent, you can ask, how did you think your brother felt when you did that? And you can ask those sorts of questions in the class as well. And it's going to reduce the frictions in the class. So it's a net gain for your peace of mind and your effectiveness. But what you really want to do, of course, is change the whole school and contribute to changing the system. So if you can get some parents involved and they understand it's important, that's building a constituency. You know this much better than I do, but any human group, you've got influencers. The principal is usually not alone. There's a board, there's a parents' association, there are people who contribute to the school, there are friends of the principal, there are other colleagues who are particularly influential. So you can probably answer that better than I, but we can all help, and I think this is one of the reasons we should be very grateful for Telefonica. We're here together. You're not isolated, one person alone in a school. We can work together on this. And to the degree that we have colleagues who have a large voice to the broader public, who can explain how important this is and tell some of your stories, and the principal starts hearing that this is a good thing. Now, let me just explain to you. The 700 fellows working in this area, our goal right now is we want to make sure that every child masters empathy and every teenager is practicing the 4 skills. So let me just take the empathy part. So the challenge for us is, how do we do that? Well, we've figured out for this issue and others that there are basically 10 places in the world you have to tip if you're going to tip the world. And one of them is the Spanish-speaking world. It's almost 500 million people, very influential, and Spain is obviously at the heart of this. So now we're just starting this work here. So let me just describe the U.S. in we're in the same position in Brazil at the moment. We believe the U.S. is a very big, complicated place with many different types of schools and ethnic groups and neighborhoods and so on. New York City school system, if you think you have problems, has over 80 languages, native languages that their children come to the school speaking. Our belief is that if we can find 60 groups of teachers, a principal or 2, in schools, especially if the schools have a track record of being pace setters. But if we can find 60 groups like you who say, we are going to make sure that every child in this school 2 or 3 years from now has grasped empathy and is practicing it, we can share with that team everything that the 700 fellows has known. We can connect those teams with one another. Now, again, we're not saying, here's a curriculum, you follow what we say to do. We're saying, you please be a team. You figure out, use all these tools, figure out how to make them work. You be creative. Now, if we can get a certain number of schools in the Spanish-speaking world, in the U.S., we can do that in all 10 places. It's we think roughly 600. And then we have allies with people like you who really care about the future of Spain and the Spanish-speaking world. And you understand that if Spain doesn't make this transition, it's toast. And you can't make the transition unless this generation of children has mastered empathy, then you're going to speak out about it. And 2 or 3 years from now, the people in this room who've taken that initiative are on fire because you know that it works. It's working for your kids. And the parents are beginning to understand it. And you can articulate that. And then that reinforces. And what we believe will happen is that in year 3 or so, the fire starts spreading. And then parents start saying to the schools, well, how good are you at empathy? And your schools will be able to say, we're very good at empathy. Thank you. And that's how you tip a system. Now, if we can do that in the 10 places in the world, we'll be able to have set in motion together the same fundamental commitment that the world made 100 years ago to universal literacy.
Muy bien, Bill Drayton, felicidades sinceramente por haber creado Ashoka. Muchas gracias por su presencia aquí y gracias por darnos este empujón anímico tan extraordinario para que realmente podamos ser personas que ayudemos a cambiar el mundo cercano que tenemos, pero el mundo en general. Muchas gracias, ha sido un honor para mí tener la oportunidad de compartir con usted este rato aquí en el Congreso de Bucarest. Buenos días. Buenos días.
Well,